Hello, and welcome to Barkeology. My name is Kenneth Daw, and my lifelong love of dogs, my passion for art, and my deep interest in archaeology have led me to create this project and this podcast. Having traveled extensively for the past 40-plus years, I've visited every historical and archaeological site that I could find, large or small. I then began gaining a deeper insight and understanding of the principles and practices of archaeology through Oxford University's online studies program, which I have since incorporated into my Barkeology book series and related programs. While this series is intended for a teenage and adult academic audience, we have also developed Barkeology Junior for younger children who share the love of dogs, art, and archaeology. Find us in your search engine or through the links at the Barkeology YouTube page. So now, let's jump right in to the Barkeology podcast, episode number 2. This image features an example of Pueblo Nation rock art found at the Sand Island Petroglyph panel, which is located at the Bears Ears National Monument in Bluff, Utah. The image shown is a petroglyph that features 2 people and a dog. The age of the various petroglyphs featured at this site are estimated to be between 300 and 3,000 years old, making it a truly ancient indigenous American cultural site. As with the pictograph featured in podcast number 1, petroglyphs also fall into the category of primitive art. Petroglyphs are also referred to as rock carvings, rock engravings, or simply rock art. As with all other types of primitive or prehistoric rock art, petroglyphs are also a global phenomenon that is found in widely varying cultures, climates, and locations around the world. Most commonly believed to be ritualistic in nature and often attributed to the workings of the tribal shaman, such art is thereby a component of religious archaeology. Other theories on the function of petroglyphs is that they were intended to serve as maps or landscape descriptors, to mark tribal territory, to record astronomical events, to operate as calendrical devices, or to record an event of personal or tribal significance. While each image is believed to have a deep meaning within the culture of origin, the image itself need not be descriptive in nature, but rather it can possibly be representative of a larger abstract, yet unknown concept, even ones that transcend the local and are represented among the widespread cultures who have no direct prior or present interaction. Theories such as this regard the global commonalities as potentially based in the physical structure of the human brain, and thus being shared by all peoples worldwide. The function, form, and effect of such rock art in the lives of those who created, lived around, and interacted with them is still a matter of much debate within the archaeological community. The study of rock art originated in the late 1800s with French scholars who were studying and writing about primitive art and archaeological finds from European caves dating back to the late Pleistocene epoch of approximately 12,000 years ago. Those, however, would be some of the youngest examples of truly primitive art, whereas the oldest known primitive cave art dates back deeper into the Upper Paleolithic era and are said to be approximately 44,000 years old. The oldest known petroglyph in the Americas is of a male figure that dates back to sometime between 9,000 and 12,000 BC. This petroglyph was found in Lapa de Santo, a cave in Brazil, and is believed to depict some aspect of a fertility ritual. Types of rock art. As we discovered in episode 1, there are 3 main kinds of rock art. There are pictographs. These are images painted directly onto a rock surface. There are petroglyphs, as shown here. These are images that are carved into a rock surface. And there are geoglyphs. These are images made by digging into the ground. So in looking at this image, Based on the method and materials used in the creation, this type of rock art is a petroglyph, with its images carved into the surface of the rock. These contrast-based images are the result of the removal of the naturally colored rock surface, called the patina, and with the visibly lighter or darker subsurface stone. While most petroglyphs are naturally contrasted, some cultures heighten the effect by coloring the carved-out images with natural earth pigments such as ochre, chalk, or charcoal. Requiring direct physical removal of surface stone in order to create the desired image, petroglyphs require the use of some form of basic carving tool. The primary tool used in this endeavor was a hammerstone, which would be used in one of two basic ways. The first way being to directly hammer or peck the image into the rock surface. The second way being to use the hammerstone to strike a stone chisel, which in turn removes the rock surface. The use of a smaller chisel with a finer point also allows for the creation of smaller images with finer detail. There is, however, another method for creating petroglyphs, and that is by utilizing a hard, fine-edged stone such as obsidian to cut or scratch the image into the rock surface. Due to the fact that this type of petroglyph creates a more shallow image, they are much more difficult for archaeologists to find and analyze, thus making them the rarest type of petroglyph. As with the pictograph featured in Episode 1, when looking at petroglyphs, an individual mark, such as the dogs or the people in this image, is also called a motif. And again, the most common known motifs include animals, plants, people, and symbols, which are also referred to as geometric signs. A collection of carved motifs on a rock wall is called a panel, and a series of panels are still classified as an archaeological site when dealing with petroglyphs. Although archaeologists always work to preserve and protect artifacts and excavation sites, the outdoor nature of most petroglyph sites creates a challenge for such preservation. In addition to the naturally degrading effects of the weather, other threats to such sites include corrosive airborne pollutants and vandalism, both of which put petroglyphs and other exposed ancient rock art at a very high risk for damage or loss. The dog in this petroglyph appears to be a lean and rangy male, possibly standing in an aggressive offensive or defensive posture, with his ears up and his tail pointed directly outwards. This interpretation is heightened by the apparent rendering of a one-on-one battle taking place between the two figures, including one holding a spear or a club, while the other appears to have thrown his weapon at the other. But again, such primitive art can never be taken as wholly literal. Thus, any interpretation is simply an exercise in conjecture on behalf of the beholder. The Pueblo Indians are regarded as the oldest existing culture in America, having documented artifacts dating back to approximately 5000 BC. While originally a nomadic hunter-gatherer culture, they eventually settled into a sedentary lifestyle in the Four Corners region of the American desert Southwest, where they developed a complex network of irrigation channels that enabled them to begin farming beans, corn, squash, and maize, while raising a large number of turkey and hunting the then abundant wild game of the region. The Pueblo's success at farming allowed them to develop high-quality woven baskets and pottery, as well as to advance their living conditions through building multi-room apartment-type buildings, later called pueblos, hence their tribal name, by the Spanish explorers and settlers in the middle 1500s. The Pueblo Nation consisted primarily of a clan-based network of tribes that included the Zuni, Jemez, Carez, and Hopi tribes. The Pueblo people's social structure was largely matrilinear, meaning that the women owned all the property, which was subsequently handed down to their daughters. Certain tribes within the Pueblo Nation, however, were patriarchal, with their property being owned by males and being handed down father to son. These two variations were also accompanied by variations in creation myth and geospatial relationships. The matrilinear tribes believed that their ancestors came from the underground, and that there were 4 or 6 directions in the physical world, starting with the north. The patrilinear tribes, however, believed that their ancestors came from underwater, and they held a 5-direction world, starting in the west. Another variation within the Pueblo Nation was the distinction between wet farmers and dry farmers, the wet farmers naturally using the advanced irrigation systems. Both, however, mostly grew corn, beans, and squash, also known as the Three Sisters, in Pueblo Nation legend and lore. Their religious practices, however, were far more unified. The children led religious ceremonies for purity. Prayer sticks were used, decorated with beads, feathers, and fur. Ground-up maize was offered up when asking for blessings, and archetypal deities appeared as visionary beings to the shaman and to the Pueblo people. Spider Grandmother and the Kachinas created and protected their world. Dogs were the only domesticated animals kept by the Pueblo peoples, and they were primarily used as beasts of burden who pulled heavy loads on a type of sled called a travois. This tradition is unknowingly acknowledged to this day in the form of dog sled racing, with most people only seeing the sport and not making the connection of necessity in the context of ancient peoples who had to rely on the practice in order to survive. In conclusion of Barkeology, episode number 2, the oldest known evidence of dogs in the Americas was found in Danger Cave, Utah, a site which dates back to approximately 8000 BC. And while it was long assumed that dogs in the Americas were descendants of American wolves, recent genetic studies have shown that Native American dogs are actually descendants of the Eurasian gray wolf, and were thus brought to the Americas approximately 12,000 years ago during the Bering land bridge migrations of the Paleo-Indian period. The types of dogs that lived and worked with ancient Native Americans are nearly all but extinct, but their legacy does, however, survive today in the modern Alaskan Malamute, Chihuahua, Greenland dogs, and Carolina dog breeds. So if you are interested in having a true piece of American history as your best friend, look into one of these traditional North American breeds. But check your local animal shelter first and specify exactly what you're looking for. Make adoption your primary option. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and click the bell for notification of upcoming videos. This is Kenneth Daw, wishing you and your dog well.